Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to the debut video for my new YouTube channel for my cutting engineer designs. Those of you who know me and know I've been in the crafting interest or crafting hobbies for years. And over the last year or so, I've decided to take a different approach to it rather than just doing things as favors for people and putting together projects. I decided to share my experiences with people because I want people to be able to share the enjoyment that I get out of this. And one of the things is this is really outside of my comfort zone. Those of you, once again, who know me really well know I do not like cameras. And it seems like over the last 2 years with the pandemic and all, it has really had to push me out of that shell of being anxious when cameras are in the room or being on video. Going through distance learning and having to be on camera all day long for the kids is just, it really stretched me in places that I didn't ever think I could grow out of. And I know, God uses a lot of those things to remind us like he's there to help us get through the biggest fears in our lives. And as silly as it is, it's something like my phobia of cameras, but God has really used circumstances around me over the last 2 years to kind of get me out of that shell. I decided I wanted to start a YouTube channel, not just to share my experiences, but I wanted to start from the ground up. I feel like every time we see YouTubers, they're fully established. They've got their studios, they've got the fancy lighting, they've got everything going on already. And their first video, it's like a production, a show production. And I just wanted to start a channel where people could walk with me as I grow through this development. I'm an everyday person, and I know this sounds so cliche because, people on YouTube will always say, I'm just an everyday person. But those of you that know me, you can relate. I am a mom of 2 boys. I'm a wife. I'm a full-time teacher. I do tutoring on the side. I recently picked up teaching crafting classes. I'm busy like most moms every day. And to top that off, see the crutches behind me. I broke my foot in 2 different places a couple weeks ago, and I just had surgery a week ago. So yeah, talk about timing. This is probably not the best timing to start this, but we'll see where it goes from there. But I want to bring in an audience that starts from the beginning with me and realizes I don't have a whole lot when it comes to the production of a YouTube channel and my crafting. So what you see around me is basically, it's a small corner in my bedroom. And this is what I've got surrounding me, basically from the ground and slowly making its way up to the ceiling. Everything is just in a little corner of my room. No fancy cameras, no fancy lights. I'm using Logitech webcams that, $25 at Office Depot. Like, I want to give an experience that people can walk away with and say, hey, I know I could do that. I saw someone who started at the same place as me and worked their way through it. A little bit about myself, and I think it reflects a lot in how I tackle problems and how I deal with scenarios, is I do have a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. And for many years, I served most of my purpose in the engineering field, writing procedures and manuals for things that we were working on. So my ability to translate directions into words or documents is one of those things that it just comes to me naturally. And that has really become an asset for me in my teaching. And I started teaching, I'm teaching elementary school kids to middle school age kids. And that has definitely helped me communicate to them when I'm teaching in a level that when they're struggling, I can walk them through step by step so they can overcome those boundaries. I took it to the next level a couple of months ago and started teaching some crafting classes. And I had done it with kids in the past. And I decided to go ahead and teach adults. Why not? If the kids could do it, I'm sure adults could do it as well. So my ability to walk people through and train people to think in a certain way is one of those things that I think I was given a talent for. And I want to use it in a way that's helpful, a way that inspires people. My channel here is not going to be limited to just a specific type of crafting. I know there's a lot of people that specialize out there in Cricut or silhouette. there's sewing YouTube channels, and I'm kind of a crossover of everything. Everything from card making to scrapbooking to using a Cricut and a Silhouette to 3D printing. There's just so many different areas of what I've experienced. I want to be able to merge all of that together. And that's what I'm hoping is going to become a little bit different in my channel. So the first thing I'm going to do today is we're going to talk about sublimation printing. And this is the new thing that just everybody's talking about in the crafting, areas or networking. And sublimation printing is what a lot of people are doing now to take designs and print it on a material that allows them to transfer it onto a mug or a tumbler or a shirt. Now, for people who have crafted before, you probably currently use your craft cutter and you make designs using heat transfer vinyl or just permanent adhesive vinyl, which is fine. It just limits you. It limits you because in your design, every specific color you have or every different color you have to have a different roll of vinyl. When you do sublimation printing, this is more of a print job. You print it like your regular printer. Picture comes out in the colors that you have on your screen, and you're going to apply it to your surface. Now, when I first started checking into this whole sublimation printing, it seemed like a really cool thing to have and to get into, but the machines or the printers that I was looking at were very, very expensive, out of my budget. Like I said, I have 2 kids. We've got my oldest one who will be in college in about 2 years. Spending $600 or above on a printer is a little bit unsettling for me. So what I started seeing people doing was going and buying these Ecotank printers. Epson sells quite a few of them. And the one that I'm going to show you guys how to convert into a sublimation printer today is an Epson printer. And it's something that I bought from Costco on a Black Friday deal. I'm going to go ahead and switch cameras here so you can kind of see what I've got. So this is the Epson. It's the Ecotank. It's the 2760, and I got this at Costco on Black Friday deal. I think it was like $220 maybe. It was a pretty good buy. And let me get my camera to focus a little bit better. This here is a printer, and it comes with the cart, or like little filling reservoirs that we will fill with sublimation ink. Right now they're empty. When you buy the printer, it comes along with a couple of bottles of the sublimation, or I'm sorry, with the regular ink that you would use for a regular printer. We are not going to use those. I'm basically taking the machinery and converting it into what I want. So once again, this is the Ecotank ET2760 by Epson. What we need to get started with that is we also need to have sublimation ink. And it's going to be in bottles like this. And the type that I have here is called Printer's Jack, and I ordered this off of Amazon. Okay, and I haven't done anything with these before, so I don't know how it's going to work out. I don't know the good, the bad, and the ugly of it yet, so we'll see. We've got all the different colors, just like your regular ink cartridges. Okay, we've got all the different colors, and we'll be using that. So in the set that I bought, and then here's the blue. In the set that I bought, it comes with those, and then there's a little plastic bag inside, which is going to have the utensils that we need in order to basically inject our ink into our tanks. So when you open up the bag, it comes with these little syringes, nothing special, syringes like you get at CVS or whatnot. And they have these little kind of like needles. They're, can't really see them. I'll take it out of the container so you can see. And these are going to go onto the end of our syringes so that we can put the ink into the cartridges, just like that. Now, I'll leave this one, are poking, so careful. They also include, a pair of gloves because, of course, you're working with ink. You don't want to get it everywhere. And some instructions. But my hope is that we can convert this and do this together today. So let's get started. I'm going to pull this out, brand new out of the box. And we have all of the materials. You're going to come with your manual. And you guys will have to excuse the way I'm dressed, but like I said, I just had surgery and I'm not really supposed to be on my feet. So put all of this. We have our bottles of regular ink, so you want to maybe put these aside. You can trash them if you don't think you'll ever use it again, but I think since Ecotank printing is the way that printers are going now, chances are you'll probably upgrade a printer and it's going to be an Ecotank printer anyways. So hold on to this, you'll probably use them. Ink. A whole lot of bottles of ink. This one actually came with 2 big bottles of black ink, and then the other colors are the smaller bottles. We'll just put those aside because we don't want to mix these up. Another thing is with this printer, so if you are deciding to change a regular printer into a sublimation printer, you want to make sure that it's a dedicated printer. There is the option where you could probably flush it all out and make sure you get the original ink out of one of these Ecotank printers, but the chance, it's not advised. There may always be residue that's left behind inside of your tanks or inside of the machine itself, and you just don't want to deal with the mixtures of the different types of inks. So that's why I do have another Epson printer that I have here on the side that I use for printing. And now I'm going to use this one strictly for sublimation. You probably do want to distinguish the two. And if you've got more than one person in the household, you probably want to make sure that they're not accidentally printing the sublimation printer, because this is not made for regular paper. We'll be using a special sublimation paper when we're printing on that. So what we got to do, switch cameras again so we can see all of the packaging and all the fun stuff, is of course, the printer is all taped up and safely packed to make sure that there's no breakage when it's being shipped. You also want to make sure that you do not plug the printer in yet until we are done filling it. You do not want your printer running when there's no ink inside. One more. There's little goodies inside here too. This looks as if I have gotten it all untaped and unpackaged. And we're going to start filling our tanks. Now, if you look in the front of this, there are 4 different reservoirs, and they're each marked with the color of ink that should go inside. Okay, so you will be able to identify which one you're going to be putting it in. And these indicators will let you know how much is in the tank. Also, your tanks in here. I'm going to move this camera just a second so you can see in here. Here are the tanks that we're going to be filling. Okay, so those are also labeled with good reasoning. They don't want you mixing up the inks, the different ink colors, because the way the printer works is based on what's in that reservoir. That's the color it will use to print. So if I put yellow in the black, it's going to think that it's black. It doesn't know that the actual color inside is not black. So if you mix these up, it will be a little confusing for the printer. And I would assume, I've never done this, but I would assume if you mix up the ink colors, you would have to flush it completely. And it probably would take quite a bit of work to flush it all out of the system completely. Ink leaves residue behind, it'll go into crevices, so you may always get a trace of the wrong color in there. So you want to be careful of that. This came with gloves, but I always have my own gloves to work with, so I'm going to grab a pair of my own gloves. And so nothing gets dirty because I have my cutting mat up here and everything. I don't want anything to damage it. That's a really loud noise. I will use this to put down all my material so that I don't stain anything or damage anything. Because I have a cutting mat, there are small cuts in here. And if it gets into those cuts or cracks, crevices, it's not going to come out. And then I'll have to replace my mat. So, within these packages. And I think the funnest thing is, since we are starting this process together, and I've never used these inks before, I've never done sublimation printing. My hope is that it's a walk through experience for all of us to learn together and find out if this is what you would be interested in doing, if this is the right ink to use, all of that good stuff. So I'm going to open this. Aluminum on the top, and then we're just going to take off. And of course, the little plastic protection that's on the other side of that aluminum piece didn't really peel off. So tap this for just a second because I'm going to wipe my hands now that I've got the black ink on the gloves. We're going to take our first syringe. This is the syringe that we kind of put the little needle end on and onto the plastic syringe. Take the end out. Just like you would do, cough medicine, you may want to tilt this a little bit. Pull this up. We've got the lock on there. And I try to do things making the least mess possible because being a mom, I know nobody's going to clean up after me. So if I make a mess, I get to clean it. All right. And I'm also going to close this just in case it happens to get tapped or marked. Let me see if I can get focus on my. Okay. So there's a little blue latch here that I'm just going to flip up, and it holds itself open. Now I want to make sure that we get a good view of what I'm filling in here looks like. Okay. So that's where I'm working. I'm going to be working here on the black. Okay. So here is where I'm at. I'm going to remove here. Gloves back on. And my guess is that we will have to fill this a couple of times on the black one. So just slowly drop it in there. And I'll show you the level. So this will take a couple times. So that's the first syringe. And you can barely even see it starting to fill up. Okay. So it's going to take a couple of times to do that. Now, it's recommended that you never run the printer if the line of ink is below that arrow that's on there. You should refill it. Also, if you're doing sublimation printing, you're probably printing jobs, and you definitely don't want to start printing something that you're going to put on a shirt or a cup or something, and then find out that your printer's running out of ink. Then you pretty much have lost the job that you've done. You're going to have to, toss that and start it from the beginning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video, and I am going to finish filling the black because this is going to take a while to get up to the top. And then we'll reconvene when I get to the yellow. Okay. Right. So we now have finished filling this up. And it did take the whole entire bottle. Let's see, this is how see the contents of how much is in there. But priming it the first time is going to be the longest process. My advice would be to always have a set of inks on hand so that after every couple print jobs, you could just refill whatever was used and then be in good shape. So that way you don't have to take, that probably was about 12 minutes to fill that one. Also keep in mind that the black is a lot larger of a tank than the rest of them. For obvious reasons, you're probably using black more than anything. But yeah, I would definitely have a second set on hand so that you can fill as you go. That way you don't have to use the whole entire time filling the reservoir. Since I know that this brand comes with, new gloves and a syringe and everything, I'm just going to throw everything out. And it was actually not that bad as far as the mess turns. This area here is pretty clear or clean still. Inside the reservoir is pretty minimal ink in there as well. So it's a pretty fast process. So once that's done, I'm just going to go ahead and shut this here. I'm going to grab an extra little paper towel just because I like to be super, super careful and wipe around to make sure there's no black ink anywhere else before I fill any of the other colors. So the order is black, yellow, magenta, and cyan. But I think I'm going to do the cyan next because it's darker than the magenta or the yellow. The yellow will probably be the last one I do. And I just don't want any chance that there be any crossover from any of the other colors bleeding on it or spotting on it or any of that stuff. So I'll probably do that one, the yellow, very last. I also did notice that when you are filling the other colors, or when you're filling the colors, you don't have to take the syringe tip off of the, the needle tip off of the syringe. You can leave it in there. You just have to pull it back very slowly so you don't get a lot of air. And then every time before I would stick it back in to inject the ink, I would just grab a paper towel and I would wipe around it to make sure it didn't have ink all over it, so I wouldn't make a big mess. And for the most part, it seems like it came out pretty clean. But this process also, even if you're not using sublimation ink, if I were to use the original ink that came with it, I could fill it the same exact way, same process. So these are very, very simple to fill, and they're supposed to be very, very cost effective. So we'll see. I mean, the sublimation ink is a lot more expensive than the regular printing ink, but most of the printers are coming out with these Ecotanks now. So it's a good thing to maybe look at investing in one now. If your printer decides to die on you, go that route right away. So the next one I'm going to do, we'll use the cyan ink next, okay? And that's the bluish color. And I'm going to just do that complete process. And I'll finish up with the remaining two colors. And then we will connect again so that we can set up the printer and print something out. see how well it works. Okay, so hang tight. So now I have filled the black, the cyan, and the magenta. And I actually want to do the last color, the yellow, live to show a couple of things that I picked up along the way. Like I said, that my engineering kicks in and I start to think about efficiency and quality and how to do it better. And within the time it took me to fill the black to the magenta, I think I've come up with some good ideas on how to keep things clean, quick, and simple. So let me switch cameras here. So the last one I did was the magenta, and this is the amount of mess I got out of it. Almost nothing, okay? So I want to do the yellow so I can show you kind of what I picked up along the way. I probably don't need to change my gloves because my gloves aren't that dirty, but once again, because I'm working with the yellow and I know yellow is a light color, I'm gonna start with a fresh slate for everything. Okay, so let me grab 2 pairs of gloves, or a pair of gloves. Another paper towel out. Ready? Yellow to open up. So the process changes starting right at the very beginning with how you open the bottle. I found this to be very, very helpful. And once again, if you're buying these regular color bottles to do your Ecotank printer, same thing would work. So let me put my gloves on. The first thing when I filled the first black one was when I took the cap off, I took all the aluminum, the foil that they have on the bottom so that it doesn't leak and make a huge mess everywhere. I removed that and I realized now that's a big no-no. Don't do that. Take the cap off, set it aside. I'm going to go ahead and put the needle on the syringe and just use the syringe to poke a hole through. So we poke the needle is already through. Then I give it a little bit more force and I twist because this has like little, around the circular edge, it has little prongs that kind of extend. So I just go ahead and I put a little bit of pressure and then go through those prongs. So now the needle's in there a little bit more. And if you can see, there's this gray portion up at the top that has a little bit of a ring and it gets a little bit thicker on top. So I just push it a little bit more so that ring gets in there. And you pretty much can leave it freestanding. And this helps you be able to pick up the ink. And then you don't have to be so slow when you're working on this. You can actually pull it up and just hold it until it fills up. Okay. So what this does now is I'm not inserting my whole entire syringe into the ink. The only thing that gets ink on it is essentially the very, very tip of the syringe. So then I can come back over here and I put it in really quickly. And then I'm ready to go back and do it again. Now I can stay at this level until the ink goes below my syringe. And I actually put a little bit too much pressure in it and it went to the next level, which is fine though. So when you put a little bit more pressure, it now goes beyond that little ring that we looked at a little earlier, the gray ring, and it goes up to the very base of the plastic syringe. But you can see still, only the syringe is touching the ink. So I can pull it out a little bit again, and you might have to pull it to where the wiggle it a little bit so you can make the hole on top, at least the size for the bottom of the needle to come out. And once again, very little mess. Taking the syringe in and just filling it. So in this manner, you're wasting very little ink getting it around the edge of the syringe, the plastic syringe part. And you're really when you pull it up, you're cleaning any excess ink off. When you do this and you pull it up, it's kind of rubbing against a little bit, and it pulls off, drops off any of the excess ink that you've got sitting there. So that makes it super, super clean and easy. Very little mess. When I bought this printer, I had a choice between the black and the white. You know, the black one was out of stock, and I'm like, I don't really care so much about the color. But here's what I would say now. Knowing that you have to fill them with ink, I probably now would say, you know what, I would go with the black, just because this is a white printer, and I got a very little bit of black ink on it at the very beginning, and I wiped it up real quick. I just got, you know, a little bit of alcohol in the corner of a paper towel and cleaned it, which is fine. Right now, this is brand new. There's no scratches, no, you know, scuffs on it. But what I could see happening is after wear and tear, you'll get a little bit of scuffing on the top of your surface of your printer, or scratches. And when you get ink around those areas, I'm assuming that the ink after some time may start to seep into those cracks and stain it a little bit. Not a big deal. For me, I'm big on like how things look, and they have to look clean and they have to look new, even if they're like 10 years old. To me, like, it has to look good on the outside. So if you have a personality like mine, keep that in mind when choosing your printer color. If you do black, it's not gonna stain or make the outside look dirty after a while. Okay, so I'm pulling up now, and now it's getting to the point where ink is not coming in now. It's getting air, because now the level of the ink is below this, the needle. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, in a circular motion, try to tear open that aluminum a little bit more, so that part of the plastic syringe will slide in. And I'm just going to wiggle a little bit to give it some wiggle room, so when I pull it up, it's not just going to flap out and make a huge mess everywhere. Once you do that, even if I push this all the way down now, it's not so deep into, I can regulate it so that the plastic part doesn't touch the ink, and still make sure that I have a clean pull from the ink. And I can just rub the needle now, because the needle's deeper in the ink. I can just rub the needle against the foil, and it cleans it up really nice. No extra spotting or splashing or any of that. Okay, the one thing I also noticed is when you're filling these Ecotanks, when it starts to bubble out the top of the reservoir, that's telling you that's it. You need to stop putting ink in there. You've pretty much met the top. So when you start to get those bubbles, don't force more than what you're already putting in there. That means it's getting towards the top, right? So you can see this ends up going really super fast now. I'm not having to be as careful about not touching the plastic syringe and getting ink everywhere. Now it's pretty clean. I don't have to worry about that. And so I can work a lot quicker. So the efficiency of filling the tanks, I've already improved greatly since I started on the black. And that is one of the things that I find myself doing in just about anything that I work on, whether it be crafting, sewing, cooking. My engineering mindset comes in, and I start thinking about processes and efficiencies and how to make something better. And that's what I'm hoping I can bring to the table to people that are following me, watching my videos, is that I can bring something a little bit different than you're used to, a different way to do things. And like I tell the students that I teach, use that science knowledge in everything you do. Have that mindset, and you will become efficient and more creative too. Believe it or not, like, that helps you become more creative at what you do. So I'm hoping that I can share all of the things that I'm learning and defining or redefining, and help it make crafting or anything that I'm going to be teaching online a little bit easier and more enjoyable. One of the things with the classes that I've taught, or I've been teaching for the crafting classes, I'm able to keep starting newcomers to, I've basically been doing the craft cutting with the Cricut and the Silhouette, but I'm able to go through the projects and prevent brand new people that are just learning from making mistakes that I've made for many, many years, or I messed up a lot of materials and projects having to learn. And that allows them the capability to come out with a perfect product the first time they try, which is very, very encouraging because given the number of forums that I'm on and, blogs and things of that sort with Cricut and with Silhouette, one of the most frustrating things you'll hear people talk about is their struggles and how they get really frustrated and how it's really hard to be okay with throwing away a lot of materials. One thing I will have to say is just like any hobby, the starting cost will be high at first because you'll need to buy just about everything you need. And then once you start to build your inventory, your supply, it'll take you a lot further. So it will be costly at first, right? And especially if you're looking into having die cutting machines, right? The cost of die cutting machines is pretty high. But once you invest that, you start buying the different materials and tools, and you can have a little bit more room and flexibility on how much you're willing to spend and what kind of materials you want to use. So probably we'll do one more syringe. I'm not getting any bubbles yet, but one more syringe will probably get me to the state where I'll have bubbles, and that'll be all of the cartridges filled and ready to go. And you can see just such a little mess. I know it's weird, but it brings such joy to my heart when I can do something that I know is supposed to be messy and it turns out almost clean, spotless. It's wonderful. So I'm getting little air bubbles. I'm going to stop there. Now you can see the black took all of the bottles. These bottles I have for the color, I do have about the same amount left in every bottle. So definitely, hang on to those, make sure they're upright. I'm going to keep them in the plastic like that so that when, if they tip over something, it's ready to go. So I'm going to put the syringe on here to cover it. I'm going to take that off, and you can see just minimal spots from the yellow. That's all it took. My gloves, I got a little bit on my gloves, but very, very little mess. My wax paper here is pretty much, I had a couple of spots of the black, but even so, even after, or before that process, still minimal mess. So that makes me happy. Makes me very happy. Now I'm not going to even hold on to these syringes and stuff, because when you order the pack again, actually, when you order the new bottles, it will come with new syringes, but I'm just realizing right now that I've thrown the ones that I've used here away when I still need them, actually, because there's still some left in the bottle. So do not throw the syringes away if you still have some in the bottle. Lesson learned. So now I'm digging through the trash. So you can see this was the cyan. The cyan was a lot messier from where we ended up at the very end with just little spots on the paper towel. Okay, so there's that one. And see, so now I've made the mistake, and you don't have to, which is good, right? Makes it flawless. Now we are ready to start installing printers, and that was just a piece of cake of everything, because now with all the new operating systems, most of the time you plug it in and it pretty much installs itself. So great, so easy, little work for you as the user to have to interface at all. The only thing is, like, maybe if you're not an administrator on the computer that you're trying to install it on, You may have to have the administrator password to do it, but other than that, it's very, very simple. These computers do everything on their own now. So I'm going to switch cameras now that we've already gotten that already. And it's good to go. So now I will clean off my area here, and then I'm going to be right back so that we can start installing the printer. Okay, so I've done the first step of plugging in the printer and powering it up. So it takes about 10 minutes for it to initialize. So know that when you plug it in, you don't want to plug it into your computer, just plug it in for power, okay? It takes about 10 minutes to initialize, which I'm assuming initialization is like pulling in that ink and starting to fill the reservoir. So when you have your first print job, ink comes out of it. The manufacturer advises like not opening the scanner or any of that while the ink is initializing. So my guess is probably nothing will really happen, but you know, kind of leave it undisturbed so you don't mess up the process while it's doing something. After it's done that initialization, you're pretty much ready to start working on alignment of the printer and all of that. So you'll put your sheet of paper in there, and this is going to vary by printer depending on what your printing looks like. It'll ask you which one of the special printouts looks like it's most aligned, you know, on the horizontal and the vertical planes. And then that's how it aligns the printer. So now that you have a sublimation printer, you can only use sublimation paper, okay? I'm not going to actually do a project today because we'll do that in a separate video. But know that when you have the sublimation paper, you have to be very careful with it. Make sure you wash your hands. You don't have any extra oils. The surfaces that you're working on aren't dirty, because all of that will affect the product or the quality of the product that you're going to make or print on here. Because this is basically going to be used to transfer your image to whatever it is that you're trying to sublimate. So you want to make sure that everything is clean and that there's nothing sticking to the sheet or on your hands or anything that's going to handle it. You want to handle it as little as possible. You don't want to even get fingerprints on it, because that'll mess up the ink and which affects the quality of your transfer of your image. Okay, so once you get into that, you'll plug your printer in. And the computer, like I said, the new operating systems are really good at identifying or detecting the printer. But your printer, no matter what brand you have, should come with, usually it's like a little quick installation thing that'll lead you into the whole installation. So like this goes through and it tells you like how to put the ink in. The bottles that they supply are a little bit different than what we use to put the sublimation ink in there. But pretty straightforward. I am going to go ahead on this video and I'm going to put a link to the printer that I have here in front of me, along with the inks that I got from Amazon and the sublimation paper, which I also ordered off Amazon. Now, I did mention at the beginning that I ordered that sublimation ink and I hadn't tried it before. I don't know how well it's going to work, but let me share with you what I typically do when I'm looking for a product. I have no knowledge whatsoever about sublimation ink. And, you know, there's a lot of other people out there that do sublimation printing and they have their recommendations, but I get a little bit skeptical of that because I never know whether, you know, they're getting paid to endorse a product or not, or whether they're looking for that sponsorship from certain, you know, company or something. So I like to go out and do my research on my own. So what I usually do is I just go through here and I will just use the toolbar. Now this is going to look a little bit, I hardly ever use the desktop version. Okay, but this is the first one that came up, but I was lucky it happened like that. But this is typically what I would do. I would do my search and I look for the item in the tool or in the search bar. And I always come up and I try to make sure I choose the ones that have pretty high reviews. Now, looking at this, you'll see that, okay, we've got, you know, 4.5 stars. This one is also 4.5 stars. These pretty much look like the same thing. It's probably a different vendor. That's why it's it's listed twice, but I can go through here and I can start to see. And once again, this is where like my math sense comes in. I look at this and I say, okay, over 10,000 orders and they're 4.5 stars. That's a pretty high rating. I questioned once that it's like, there's 4 reviews and they have 3 stars. I'm like, oh, you know, the ratio doesn't really make me, or doesn't give me that warm, fuzzy feeling. But here I'm saying, okay, over 10,000 people have tried this and it looks like they're very, very happy with the ink. So I'm hoping we're going to do some projects, and then you guys, like I say, I want you guys to be with me through the whole process of checking things out and setting things up, and we're going to see how this works out, and we'll do some projects and we'll test it out for ourselves, and we'll see the results, and we'll give it the thumbs up, thumb down. But for the time being, I will put links on the video so that you guys can find where I bought the stuff at. And hopefully everything works out good. It turns out to be a good product, and that way you start off with something from the very start that's a quality product and will give you a very good output for your merchandise or any product that you're trying to create. So with that, that's the end of my first video for our YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button so that when we're getting ready to start those projects, we're ready to test out the sublimation ink and the printer and see what it works or how it works. I want you guys to be part of it with me, experience it all with me. So hit that subscribe button and look for the links below, and you will know where to find the products. Until next time, we'll see ya.